recalls the battle while the final roll calls are read. They were the finest soldiers, it was my privilege to lead. And they deserve the medals, the men who died, not me. Not me, not me. I just did what I was called.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Tribe Podcast. Today, we are so lucky and honored to have Mr. Keni Thomas, former Army Ranger Hall of Famer, actually, and bronze medalist, a recipient. Yes, the Bronze Medal of Valor, which is, amazing. Thank you so much for your service, Keni. But we are so honored to have Mr. Keni Thomas on, who fought in the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia. If you've ever seen the movie Blackhawk Down, this guy, I think, Keni, we actually heard your name mentioned in the movie. We heard of Thomas. Was that you?
So that's a good way to start this whole thing. Well, yes, thank you. So they moved all the names around in the movie, and because they were making a movie and they didn't want it to become a documentary. So there's a Thomas in the movie, but the Thomas is on the vehicles. And then I was never on the vehicles. And then the main guy, Matt Eversman, the main character, Josh Hartnett played him, was at the crash site, but Matt was never at the crash site. So they just moved all the names around. And then a couple names they made up, a lot of them they didn't. Some of the names that were the real names had tiny roles in the movie and had huge roles in that battle. But for the most part, and I'll tell you what, that's the most common question I get was, well, what was it like, the movie? And I'll always say, they did a great job of making it the attention to detail. So we were all worried it was going to be like a Rambo thing, it was going to come out and be cheesy, but they did a good job. And my favorite story to tell is about the movie being made was when the Army got the ask from Bruckheimer, they sent the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment over there. And so it was, most of the guys that were flying the movie were the actual pilots from the battle. And so they didn't know they had them. And the director, we met the director at the premiere, and he was kind of telling the story. And he goes, I didn't even know who I had. And so I'm trying to figure out this scene. There's a scene where the little bird lands in the street, and the pilot's going to jump out and grab some of the wounded guys out of the main crash site 1. And so he's asking the pilot, he's going, all right, so how are you going to do this? What do you go? Well, I think I'll just pull the guy over my lap and just take off. He goes, oh, you won't throw him in the back? He goes, no, I'm just going to put him over my lap. He goes, well, is that how the guy would have done it? And he goes, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's how he would have done it. And he flies away, and the military advisor goes, that's Carl Meyer. Carl was the guy who did that. And he's like, wait, what? And it sort of changed the way they filmed the whole movie. They kind of, hey, how many of you guys were in this battle? And then they said, what would you guys do? And that he just moved the cameras and then let them do it. And they actually had a company of Rangers showed up in Morocco, and they did all the fast roping scenes, and they were, they got into trouble with the King of Morocco because now you have 2 special operations units operating in the city. Hey, pause real quick, guys. Hang on. Pause. Can you pause for me real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
totally good. Yeah, keep going. We got editors for this.
Sorry, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
Jet and I are home by ourselves, and he's trying to figure out how to operate by himself. And so I gave him my iPad, and then the iPad shut off. And so he's over there on camera going like this.
How old is Jet?
He's 7. Yeah, come here a second. He's watching F1. So we went to the last weekend. We got to go to the Detroit Grand Prix, and we went up there.
That's sweet.
It was so much fun, man. I called in a bunch of, I got to know somebody. where we're not just sitting in the stands. I got to know somebody.
Right.
And it turns out I knew two people, and he ended up meeting Joseph Newgarden, and he ended up meeting Felix Rosenquist, who just won the Indy 500.
No way.
So we
well, that's what we were just at the Indy 500. So you were talking about Newgarden and Rosenquist, and one of the traditions that Schulte, his friend, does the night before is we auction off all these cars, and those were obviously some of the bigger names up there that were getting bidded on for thousands of dollars. But it was dude, it was so fun. It was my first experience at a race like that, so
it's a lot of fun. Me too.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
It was he's a little kid. He was all things F1, and one of my buddies was like, dude, F1 is expensive and inaccessible. He goes, if I were you, I'd start following, IndyCar because it's more of an American sport. They're much more, and he was right. They were so great. Like they let him sit in the cars. They cruise. Like he was running through barriers and no one's stopping him. It's Joseph Newgarden's car. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for the pause. Sorry. So here we'll go back to where we were. All right. So we were talking about the
King of Morocco
film, and they were filming it in Morocco. And so now you got two special operations units in town. You got the Rangers and the 160th, and the stunt guys wouldn't do all the fast roping scenes. So that's why they brought the Rangers in. And it took them a minute, but they got the movie finished. And I thought none of us ever knew. I mean, it was so off the radar, and the battle was, nobody knew about it. And until they made this movie, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, you're part of something famous. And it was strange, and it's still kind of strange. I haven't really I've watched the movie that a couple times way back when it first came out, but otherwise I don't really watch it. It doesn't, I have to be very careful. If I watch that movie, the images are so close that it will take the place of the real images in my head. And since I tell the story so much, I don't want to replace it with movie. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Absolutely. You want to keep that real story.
Well, when you worked as a consultant on the film, were you on set with them in Morocco for some time as well?
No, if by consultant you mean did I go drink beers with them when they came to Fort Benning for the Ranger training? Yes, I was in it. I hung out and talked to a lot of them. But when they went to Morocco, I was actually working on the Mel Gibson movie, We Were Soldiers, and they were filming at the same time. So I was working as an advisor on that movie, and I couldn't go over and do both.
Gotcha.
So in your mission, going back, I'm actually surprised to hear that no one had heard about what had happened until the movie came out, or it wasn't a big deal or popular. I think it was 18 American soldiers dead in that mission, 19 and over 70 wounded. Why do you think that was, that there was not a lot of awareness at the time?
Yeah, that's a good question. You think about CNN, think about how news is broadcast. So something hits the headlines and you're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I didn't even know we were still in. Where's Mogadishu? Wow. Man, that sucks. And then it's done. And then, nobody really, it wasn't like we got sent off to war. We were over there under the radar. And then all of a sudden you see these pictures of guys getting drugged through the streets, Americans, and I pissed a lot of people off,
right?
But mostly people in the know, not the general public, and so then it just kind of went away. And then Mark Bowden wrote the book Blackhawk Down, but he wrote it as the book was part of a series of newspaper articles that they did, like 12 articles, like these full page stories when people were still reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. And that's when it started coming around, because he started interviewing some of us. And we're like, hey, man, did you ever talk to that guy, that Mark Bowden guy? And then we hear they're making the movie. So it's funny. When the movie came out, and it came out in the early 2000s, and people started calling me to come talk about it. Because there was a political story behind it as well. So all the news shows wanted me to come on, and it was real strange because you felt I was still trying to process the whole thing. Like it was just something I had put behind me. And then all of a sudden here it was like, bam, you were part of this thing and it's famous now and you're a hero. And you're just going, and you were trying to figure out, what do I say about this? And it took a minute for me to figure that one out. And it was because I had just gotten out. I was moving to Nashville. I got you guys knew I got out and I was very, very different. I got a songwriting deal in Nashville. And so moved up there, and it all happened at the same time. So this movie comes out, I'm starting to write songs. Then you're going to the radio stations, trying to get your single pushed up the chart. And then they're looking at your bio and they're trying to find something to talk about. And it says, oh, you were in the military. What'd you do? Well, I was an Army Ranger. Oh yeah, I was Rangers, kind of like that Blackhawk Down thing. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, kind of just like that. and then all of a sudden you become the guy. And that's how the speaking thing started. It wasn't anything that I set out to do. And I'll tell you where the hardest part of it really was trying to figure out what to say so that it worked. And where the big shift for me was, I had a buddy of mine, his name was Jeff Struker. Jeff had been in the battle, and Jeff got, when he had his come to Jesus and he became a chaplain. So he goes back into the military and he ends up working his way up and he becomes the head chaplain for all of the Rangers. And Jeff and I were kind of friends at the time, but we didn't talk all the time. But he calls me up one day. He goes, hey man, I saw you on CMT up in Nashville. That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what do you mean what's wrong with me? Because you didn't say anything about us. And I was like, I know, Jeff, I kind of want to just stay in my lane. I just want to write songs. I don't want to be like, I don't want to be Kenny the singing Ranger. And he's like, shut up. And he's like, dude, you got that microphone handed to you for a reason. That's a gift. Like, if you don't tell our story, who's going to tell it? I don't know anyone else from Task Force Ranger that has the opportunity to do it, because you can do more with one song than I can do with 100 sermons. You better figure out what you're going to say, and you better figure it out fast. And he kind of got my butt about it. And Jeff was right. And it took me a minute. And I started thinking, okay, what am I going to talk about that's positive? Instead of dancing around the whole thing because I was guilty of having survived. And so you never really said anything. And mostly what I talked about was training, because it was impersonal. And so when I started getting into the leadership aspect of it, of taking care of people and setting an example for others to follow, that's what I chose to tell from the story. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speeches later, this story's become a very positive thing for me, because I take the very positive lessons out of it. And then, as you guys have heard, you can pick those up. You're going, oh yeah, he's talking about very simple things, taking care of each other. And it's not about the atrocities of some sort of terrible battle or these big acts of valor. It's really just, hey, in the worst of times, that's really when we need you. And that's what I get up and talk about now. I tell people it's very simple. You're going to get out of it what you want to get out of it. It's like church. But what I'm hoping you get is 3 things. 1, what example are you setting for the people you serve? And then number 2, ask that one again. Who are you serving? And once you keep that in mind, then whoever it is you come in contact with, then you start realizing, oh, I'm being a servant leader. What example am I setting? Those things start working stuff. And then I think what the story will earn the right to say to people is, when we really need you is when it gets hard. And that's what the story is about these terribly difficult moments where people did amazing things for nothing more than just each other. It was so simple.
So, Kenny, take us back there at the start. What was your role in the operation? What did what led up to the operation. It was Operation Restore Hope, right?
And that was that was the over encompassing name that they gave why America was there, but it wasn't why we were there. Yeah.
Okay.
I can start with that. You want to go with that?
Yeah. What was your role in the operation, and kind of take us through some of those moments where it was really just about being there for each other?
Yeah. So there's a big dash between those two. Like, why were we there, and then being there for each other. The original mission was the package that was sent in was a special operations package. They called it Task Force Ranger. But within that task force was a group of Rangers, about 100 of us, a squadron of Delta Force operators, about 40 in their support people, and then the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment, which is the helicopter pilots and the crews that fly us around. And we had all trained together. And we were there to get a guy named Adid. Adid was the bad man. Adid had been attacking, he was a warlord. He had been attacking the United Nations food shipments. Food was the only source of power in that country. There wasn't any money. So if he could control the food, he controlled the people. And when American troops were tasked out to guard the food shipments, he started attacking American troops. And then that's a no-go. So we were sent in as this task force, kind of like a posse, to go get the guy. And we had been country for 3 months. We had run 44 raids already into the city to try and find him. And if we couldn't get him, we had a most wanted list. So we were kind of breaking down his cell. But we weren't making much headway. And it was taking its toll on morale. And because we were the best in the world, and we were thinking, well, we will own this place. The intel that we had seen was a bunch of guys running around on the back of Toyota pickup trucks with football helmets on. And we're going to own this place. But as you know, if someone doesn't want to be found, it's really difficult to find them. And I've given that example a bunch about, we knew exactly where bin Laden was when we went into Afghanistan. And it took us 10 years to get them because those guys are good at moving. So we had been there, and the day of this battle was actually a day off. They finally had given us this day off. It was a Sunday, and everybody's, doing whatever it is they do. And I was writing a letter home to my mom, and she still has the front end of the letter because I was totally lying. It said, "Dear Mom, you would love it here in sunny Mogadishu. It looks like Fort Lauderdale. If you're ever deployed to a combat zone, I'm going to tell you right now, Kenny says it's okay. Lie to your mom because she doesn't want to know what's going on over there." They were throwing mortar rounds at you it sucked, and the guy walks out of the airplane hangar and he yells, "Get it on." And that's, just like firefighters or police officers. And that's how the mission goes down. And we found out pretty quickly it was going to be a raid. Now, Adid wasn't in the building, but there were supposedly 2 of the guys on our most wanted list were in this building. And so that's the raid. And that's what the mission was supposed to be. And that's what the mission was. We went in. We hit the target. We went in the middle of the day. In the middle of the day sucks. Nobody wants to go in the middle of the day. And it was funny. I was speaking about 2 weeks ago, you've seen me speak before, and I always go, does anybody in the class want to take a guess as to why we don't like going in the middle of the day? And some lady in the audience the other day goes, because it's hot? It's like, well, it was hot. Yes, ma'am. Well, and in a sense, because they can see you. And that's why we operate at night, is because we don't like bad guys seeing us because they've been shooting at us for 3 months. But there was a middle of the day raid, and it was an advantage for them. That's why they had the meeting in the day. But if we could get there in 10 minutes, we could get these guys. And that's exactly what happened. We went in at 3:30 in the afternoon. We hit the target building. We got the bad guys. We do the habeas grabus, and we pull them out. The trucks come driving up. We throw all the bad guys on the trucks. The trucks drive away. And I was looking at my watch. We had been on target for less than 40 minutes. And it was done. And I was watching the last truck turn the corner as it drove away with the prisoners. And that's when the first Blackhawk got hit, and that's where the Blackhawk Down title came from. All of us had a radio on, and the radios just lit up. Man, there's a Blackhawk going down, and we're all looking up in the sky, and there it is. And the call sign was Super 6-1. So there were 8 Blackhawks that went in on this mission. All of them had a call sign 6-1 through 6-8. 6-1 was Cliff Walcott, Bull Briley, his 2 crew chiefs, and then 4 Delta Force snipers were on board. So there were 8 men on that bird. They were a platform. What they would do is fly around the target building and just cover for us, right? Just another aerial platform. And they get hit and they're going down. And I can describe to y'all what we were feeling, because you have felt the same emotion. I have lived enough life to know that it is not the level of the trauma. It's just whether it's traumatic. You get that same gut feeling and knot in your stomach. And we all say the same thing, which is, oh, I can't believe that's happening. And then therein lies the lesson of what I preach, which is it is happening, and it's happening to you. And now you have a choice to make, because if it's happening to you, that's when you start realizing it's happening to the people on your left and on your right, because so few things in this life do we ever go through all alone. And when your headspace and your mindset is the servant leader mindset, and I am here for you. You can trust me to be, we don't have to be best of friends. I can actually disagree with what you believe, but together we are yoked together on a purpose, and we absolutely need each other, and we absolutely trust each other. And when you're there for somebody like that, when you realize that it's happening to you, you're going to go, oh my gosh, it's happening to somebody else. And it's just the way your brain shifts, as opposed to going internally and it's all about you. And that's what I tell people. I was like, you have a choice to make in that moment. It's a leadership choice. And that choice is going to dictate your actions. And y'all, I don't ever walk into a room and tell people, here's what you got to do in this situation. I'm very careful with my words, but I do ask you, who do you want to be in those moments? Because who you want to be will always dictate what you do. And in how well you do it depends on what you know. So it's a framework for leadership that the Rangers use. It's what should a leader be, do, and know. But I always start with the be. And that's like, if who you want to be is this character-driven, principle-centered, God-centered person. Heidi, my wife, she always calls it, somebody better look like Jesus up in here. And if who you're trying to be, if you have a clear definition of that and you've defined it and you know who that is, you're going to be the person who responds. It's just time and time and time again, we keep seeing it. The people who know they're part of something bigger than just themselves are the ones who move to help. And I think you guys understand, I'm not talking about combat. Like, I'm talking about day-to-day issues. It can be small problems. It can be challenges that we're up against. It can be your neighbors. It can be your family. It can be your friends. It can be your coworkers. But when someone's in need, you got to step up. And the way that I kind of put the exclamation point on that one is, you guys, like, there's no shortage of tragedy out here in America. Like, you can turn on the news just about every other week and you'll see something going down that you're like, holy cow. Like, just take active shooters alone. So, churches, synagogues, malls, concerts, schools, kids walking into schools, like just that kind of thing alone. And you're going, man, how could that? And how does that happen? And it gets you upset. And what really drives me crazy and all the guys that are like me is, like, you'll see this guy in the news. They'll walk out onto a campus, pulls a gun out of his car and starts shooting, and everybody scatters. And then there's usually a story about 1 or 2 people who did something absolutely heroic. Like, they tackled the dude, or they put people They got everybody organized and moved. And if you actually dig into, well, who are those people? Guarantee you're going to find they either were in the military, they served in some sort of public servicing, they were a coach, they were a teacher, they were someone who understood they were part of something. And so my question in those moments is, well, how come everybody doesn't move to help? And I've had this discussion with friends of mine. Like, we've had some tough debate, like my friends who weren't in the military, and they're like, well, Kenny, not everybody's trained to do what you do. I go, you don't have to train to move forward and help. Like, even like I saw at a concert when people started stampeding each other because they were running and panicking. Why doesn't it? And I'm telling you, the reason why is it's very simple. It's because your brain in those moments where the stress meter is tacking into the red, you will default to the level of your training. You will default. And that's where everybody hears that fight, flight, or freeze thing. The truth is most people freeze. They just do nothing. And that doesn't have to be even in these high stress moments. Think about how many times y'all have had to go step in and have a really tough conversation with somebody, a courageous conversation. What do most people do when that time comes? They you know what they do? Watch. They do this, and they freaking ghost you. They'll send off a text message and they'll ghost you because they don't have the capacity to have the difficult conversation. They've never been told they're part of something. They've never been part of, hey, we need you. We need you when it's hard. Please don't run away. And so they don't believe they have it in them, or they don't know how to handle the situation. So they do nothing, and nothing accomplishes that. It always has. The math is clear on it. 0 plus 0 is still 0. And y'all, I have a lot of grace. I'm not pointing a finger of hypocrisy at the do-nothingers. I don't want you to confuse us. Well, if there's an active shooter, I don't know what to do. I wouldn't trust it. No, I would tell you take cover, but I would also tell you to help people out, or don't. Panicking isn't going to help anything. But if there's an opportunity to step in instead of, and this is what happens. This is what doing nothing looks like. And y'all, I'm going to preach on this with authority only because I catch myself doing it. Like I'm not immune to this one. And it's, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. There's a Blackhawk going down. And in that voice, who do you want to be? And then you keep going, ooh, I hope they're going to be okay. And then for the most part, I catch myself on a regular basis saying this. And then it defaults this one. Man, somebody ought to go do something about that. And then I hear that. Yeah, Kenny, somebody. Who's the somebody? And I'm like, I don't want to be the somebody. I don't, because it sucks. It's hard. I don't want to roll up my sleeves. I don't want to have to go get in the plane and go. I don't want to have to go have that really tough conversation with the cheerleading mom who doesn't get it, or the dad on the sidelines who's yelling at his kid who I'm trying to coach. I'm like, oh, but I will, because it requires something of us, and that's how you set the example. That's who I want to be. And then Heidi reminds me of that all the time. When I'm over here getting fired up and crazy about things I shouldn't, she looks at me, she goes, hey, there's a Blackhawk going down. Who do you want to be? And it calms me down quite, like gives me perspective. I'm like, yep, you're right. Let me do the right thing based on who I want to be. And what I'm working on these days right now is my character and my faith. And that's a task. That's all out of the 15 or 20 character traits I can give you guys to go work on who you want to be. I only work on 2 right now because it's hard. It's a lot of work to mold who this model of character, but it's going to make the difference. Who do you want to be? And I think I probably beat that up. And I haven't even gotten to the part of fighting for each other yet. But the idea is that, y'all, we need you. And when we need you is when it gets hard. And yeah, you don't want that soup sandwich that just got handed to you, but you have to own it, because if you don't own it, who does? And it's not a rhetorical question. The answer is always somebody else. And as people who have, especially in the Ranger Regiment, where you have a creed and it says, I will shoulder more than my share of the task, whatever it may be, 100% and then some. You know, you're not going to put it on somebody else. If you can do something, you will do something. And I'm telling you, most of us can do something, but it's all going to begin with who you want to be. And that's my hope. It's why I do these podcasts. It's why I put the content out there from my courses that I teach. It's because my hope is that people become the kind of leader others want to follow, and that they're going to step up and move forward when it's tough. Because they never told us once in the Ranger Regiment that it was a rank, a title, or a pay position. It was the example we set for the people we serve. It's pretty simple. If you define leadership that way, then what's stopping you from being that person? It's all right here. It's not a title or rank at all. All right. Ask me another question so I feel like I've been talking forever.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah,
this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just soaking it in. I'm being a sponge here. I know. So when that Blackhawk first went down, you mentioned, being the example for the people that you're serving. Are you, like, in that moment, were you hyper aware of your body language in your words that you were giving? I know you became a chalk leader, I think, later on in the story, but were you second in command? Obviously, you just said rank doesn't matter, so let's put that aside. Were you hyper aware of your body language and, the words that you were giving to your team in that moment?
Yeah, that's yes, I was hyper aware. Not so much about the words, but what my body was doing. Yes. And I will come back to that. So remind me, there's a part when I start getting to the part where the battle kicks in, I'll tell you how your body and your senses your spider sense kicks in. What I was super dialed in on was, so the Blackhawk goes down, right? Let me just kind of orient y'all, because I'm going to start pointing and everybody's going to go, what is he doing? So the Blackhawk goes down. This is north. The Blackhawk goes to the northeast, and it's only like 5 blocks away. So we're going to move 3 blocks east, and then we'll make a left turn towards the crash. So the vehicles that had just driven away with the prisoners, we figured they're going to beat us over there because they were just over there. So there's the rest of us that are on the target building. There's only about 70 of us. So we're all going to move on foot. So we all start booking down the road. Doug is my friend who was the squad leader. Doug and I are the last 2 guys to move off the target building. And so I'm watching this long line of men move down the street and turn left. And then Doug, who was the squad leader, gets hit. And the medic goes running back. Sergeant Watson, my platoon sergeant, goes running back to check on him. And I could tell Doug was hit. He was bleeding pretty bad from the neck, and he just goes, "I'm hit." And that was about as urgent as he said it. But I knew what was coming next, because I see Doug and the medic running down the road, and I figured Doug's going to be okay. They're going to take him to the vehicles. He'll drive back to base. He's going to be okay. But I saw Sergeant Watson, and he's coming at me with Doug's radio. And he looks right at me, and it probably took 30 seconds from the time Doug runs away with the medic and they're trying to stop the bleeding. Sergeant Watson hands me Doug's radio. He goes, "Hey, Bourne's been hit. We got to send him out. You're in charge." And that was it. And I know I had that look on my face, like I'm in charge. Like right now, I got to be in charge. And this is that moment where, again, we don't have to be happy about the soup sandwich they hand us. And I've heard it. I get it. It's like, well, I didn't ask for this. No, I know you didn't. But name one person that ever wanted hard times. And well, that's not here's a big one out there and out there in the workforce. Well, that's not my job, but it is now. And well, that's not my responsibility. You are a part of something bigger than just yourself. And aren't you here to take care of each other? And then, well, it's not fair, said every kid ever. I get it. But if we don't own it, who does? And the who does was my 3 guys who were all looking at me. All right, what are you going to do now? Now, fortunately, we had a process in place, and that helps a lot to have rehearsed that process. But I'm telling you where the differentiator is. It's because DeJesus, Saransky, and Floyd we had trained those guys. David Floyd was the lowest on the totem pole. He was the newest guy there. But David was ready to take over if he had to, because we taught him. And David understood that whether he be the last man standing, if he can accomplish that mission, he's going to do it. So we made sure that everybody always knows the mission and everybody knows how to lead. And we teach them that. In addition to his skill set of being a great machine gunner. So, and you guys know, especially in the class that I got to speak for down there at Cincinnati, all those guys are fifth-year engineers. Am I right? They're fifth-year engineers, and they all have jobs. And I think they're starting to see that in the workforce, is that the workforce is super good at teaching us our skill set or where they want us, our job to do. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to take time and teach you how to lead your peers. And leading your peers is really hard. It's even when you've been taught, it's still very tough, because that moment comes and it's squarely on your shoulders. And so the process for us, at least, it lets everybody know, okay, it's happening, so that you don't ever have that. Well, who put you in charge? Why do you think who do you think you are? Well, okay. That makes me the squad leader. So basically you just announced it, but I've mainly announced it to myself so that I can come to grips with it. And then you look at DeJesus, you're the team leader. And then here we go. So the four of us are moving down the road. We're so far behind the power curve. And this is a good tip. Tip's the wrong word. That seems too lightweight. But the lesson in this one is you're going to get put, especially the college folks that are listening to this, you're going to go, let's say you got your engineering degree, and you're going to go do mechanical engineering for somebody. You're not going to do what you were taught in the classrooms, and you're going to get put in charge of people. And at some point they're going to promote you. And what you're going to want to do is you're still going to want to do the mechanical engineering side of it because you're really good at it. But that's not your gig anymore. Your job is to be the leader and the supervisor and to sit back and set other people up for success. And so it's a really tough thing to do. And you'll see it out there. People get promoted, but they've never been given the leadership training to take over. So they still want to put their hands on everything, doing the same thing that they were doing. And in my head, that's what I'm trying not to do. We're moving down the road. So when you ask me, am I super aware or hyper focused? Yes, I'm trying to think, okay, think like a squad leader and let DeJesus be the team leader, because I've taught him, he knows what he's doing, and we're ready to go. Now, when we turn the corner towards the crash site, picture the crash is only about 2 blocks up the road. So you got about 100 guys now fighting on both sides of the street. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Long before they ever made the movie that we were talking about, the front end of this, long before they ever made that movie, we used to call that moment Hollywood, because I'd never seen anything like it. There was gunfire. Everyone was engaged. There were little birds doing gun runs over our heads. It was so over the top. And we have been in some gunfights, and I've been in gunfights since, but they never lasted. And the reason they don't last is because we call it when you come into contact with the enemy, you gain immediate fire superiority through violence of action. And I know that sounds kind of violent, because it is. It's gain immediate fire superiority through violence of action. It doesn't work in relationships. It really only works in a fire.
Yeah, it does not.
That was the mentality that we had to teach guys to stay. You can't just yell your way through things. But we couldn't get the superiority on them because they outnumbered us. There was 1,000 insurgents, and this was our first run-in with Al Qaeda. And it was so that we were already outnumbered 10-1. So, and I don't think I gave you the situation, but the crashes over here, the 2 pilots died on impact, so we couldn't get Cliff Walcott's body out of the wreckage. And so we're trying to hold these positions because they're like, hey, just hold what you got. In about 15 minutes, the vehicles should be here. We don't even know where the vehicles are. We don't know why they're not here. And so I'm going around to my guys and telling them, hey, hold what you got, hold what you got. And at this point, to get back to the idea was I hyper focused or my body dialed in? Vividly, I can still close my eyes and remember it. I saw things happening in just slow motion, frame by frame, like, cause you were so dialed in the moment. Like, for an example, I could see a guy step out from behind a wall, throw a grenade, let the grenade go. I'd watch the grenade come through the sky. I'd be like, grenade, hit the ground, grenade goes off, step back up, grab the guy who just threw the grenade before he even had a chance to drop back down. Probably a second and a half, 2 seconds in real time. It was amazing how dialed in and focused you were. But it was because you had such confidence in the guys around you. Like, I didn't have to turn around and watch my back because I knew it was covered. And I still felt like we were training. I was doing a good job of transitioning to squad leader in my head. And I'm just, it's getting kind of, the gunfire starting to, now it's starting to get a little overwhelming. I'm starting to get worried because I'm like, man, how long are we going to be able to hold these positions? And then, man, just like that, out of the blue, like the first guy gets hit and he starts yelling, I'm hit. And he goes down. And it was Earl Fillmore and he was one of the Delta Force operators and kind of like the Pro Bowl elite. Like if Myles Garrett took a dive on the field, the game would stop. Like everybody would be like, because Myles isn't supposed to get hurt, right?
Right.
And the guy's 5 meters away from me, and I could tell you from where I was that Earl was gone. I didn't have to check his pulse. I didn't have to check his breathing. And this is that, if you've never been a believer in the idea that there's a soul in the human body and that the soul goes someplace else when the body dies, because it didn't look like the movies. It didn't look like he was sleeping. It didn't look like this, he was all white and like, it just didn't look like Earl. Like, it looked like a weird wax museum. This wax museum, it looks sort of like the person, but it doesn't look like the person. It looks fake because there's no life in it. Mm-hmm. And that was an eye opener for me because I'd never been there when someone dies. I wasn't an authority on it. And it wasn't anything like what I thought it was going to be. And it was very, and I mean this with the utmost respect. It was very, almost non-eventful other than the crazy realization that we're losing people. And I want you guys to hear me on this because it's the script writer wants that moment in the movie to be very tragic and very dramatic. The writer of the book wants that moment to jump off the page. And so they describe it how they might imagine it to be, but it just isn't that way. It doesn't mean that you don't feel it, but you compartmentalize it. You just take that and you're like, okay, we just lost Earl, and you stick that away. Now you're going to deal with that later. Mm-hmm. Some of us years later, you have to unpack it somewhere. It doesn't just stay in there, but not in the moment because you're too busy. You know what to do. You can try to do the triage. You can try to do first aid. We keep people alive on the battlefield. We're outstanding now. We had a 98% survival rate in Afghanistan and Iraq because we're so good at keeping people alive. Right. And frankly, the next book I'm writing is going to be called Hard to Kill because Americans are hard to kill. We don't go down easy. And but it also, remember, if the focus of this talk today with the three of us here is about taking care of each other, where do you think my mindset went as soon as I saw Earl go down? Because it was like, oh,
what can we do now?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, if it's going to happen,
if it can happen to him,
it's going to happen to me. And I am not that special. And that's when my head went, ooh, it could happen to my guys. And I turned around. I went to Floyd. I went to Floyd first, and I told David, the least among us of rank. I said, "Hey, David, Floyd, look at me. I need you to take care of these guys. I can't be here. I cannot be here. I'm going to move down the road. I'm going to go check on the crash. I'll come back. But your mission is to keep them alive. You understand me? And he looked at me super confident, got you covered, Sergeant. And I look back on that and I think, we can't always be there, y'all. When you guys take charge of a group of people, or when you become parents, or you're in charge of a team, you can't always be there. But the mark of great leadership is how well they're going to be doing without you around. And that, you better hope that you push them hard and train them with everything you had. Because, and I want you to hear me on that one too. Did you give it everything you had? Before you're ready to give up on somebody, did you give them everything? Can you honestly say that? Not, y'all, at least once a week, I'll go into these ExxonMobil. I was there 2 weeks ago with Exxon, and I'm talking to their tier 3 people, and they're like, hey, well, what do you do if you got this one guy, and they were kind of basically starting to bitch about somebody who wasn't doing something. And I'm like, okay, well, we can talk about standards. Yes, you got to meet the standards, but you have to look yourself in the mirror and know that you did everything you can to lift that person up to that standards, rather than just stepping away and letting them fail so that you didn't have to Pontius Pilate yourself from the whole thing, so you didn't have to deal with it. Like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah,
we see
absolutely.
it. And I think that's that lasting lesson in that moment, because I knew I couldn't be there for those guys, but I knew that they would take care of each other. And so I'm going to condense the story, right? Because what's really fun about y'all's the screen that we're using, it has a timer, and I'm like, wow, I don't even think I've been talking for 20 minutes, and we've been talking for a while.
I know
it's
It's
crazy.
so in depth, and yet we're going through it so quickly.
So if you have something that you think might be a question that relates, but where we're at right now is we still haven't gotten Cliff's body out. We're coming up on, it's getting dark now. At this point in the battle, the vehicles still aren't here. They're getting hammered out in the streets. And the story that I always tell about that one is, why aren't they here? And the enemy gets a vote, y'all. The enemy gets a vote, which means please don't get all bent out of shape when the enemy steps in and changes your plan, because it's going to happen. You have contingencies in place. Sometimes those contingencies have very narrow margins, but you know what to do when it happens. All the standing around whining and complaining about whatever your problem might be that you're facing is a waste of time. Move through the problem if it's coming at you. Figure out a way. And those guys never gave up. They just kept coming. But by the time it got dark, there's about 135 guys total in this battle. By the time it got dark, we already had 78 were wounded and 19 end up being dead by the next day. So there weren't enough of us left to get everybody out. So all we could do is wait. I'll tell you, that was a terrible feeling. Like, I knew they were coming. I knew they wouldn't give up, but it was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me, man. Now, fortunately, the nighttime kind of slowed down. And there'd be like these moments where somebody would take some shots at us, and then we would just light them up, and then it would just slow down again. And you just hear them coming through the whole night through the streets. And when they finally got through, it was 4 a.m. And we loaded all the wounded guys up, and there was no more, the vehicles were so beat up and blown up and shot up, but they came. And there was another, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about there, because somebody ultimately will know somebody who was in the 10th Mountain Division. The 10th Mountain had one small contingency, the only other American group in town, but they weren't Rangers. They weren't stormtroopers and door kickers. They were combat engineers. They were like you guys. They were tasked out with building stuff and guarding food shipments. They were American soldiers, and they came. And I'll tell you, the first kid that when I made the link up that night with them, the first kid steps off of one of these. They didn't have the vehicles. They didn't have any kind of armor. They had flatbed trucks, and they stacked them up with sandbags to the point where it was useless. They just jumped off the vehicle and started running through the streets for us. And when this kid got to me, he was a 10th Mountain kid, and the first thing he says to me, he out of his mouth was a disclaimer of, "Hey, Sergeant." I go, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Hey, Sergeant, I'm just a mechanic." And I'm like, "Buddy, I heard you in that. You were out there fighting, yeah?" And he goes, "Roger that, Sergeant." I said, "That weapon looks like you've been using it, yeah?" And he goes, "Roger that, Sergeant." I said, "Yeah, you're my hero right now, man. Let's go." And that kid helped me load wounded people into these vehicles all night long. And if I ever meet that guy, I will tell him, "Thank you," and I'll give him a big hug, and then I'll punch him in the throat. Because shut up. Stop selling yourself short. Like we're human and we're magnificent at selling ourselves short. Here's a dude that just went through the worst battle in the history of the United States Army. And he's telling me, "Well, I'm just a," like, and I still see it, y'all. I go to all kinds of things with a veteran will walk up to me. "Yeah, I never did what you did. I was just a," shut up. Stop. Because you will begin to believe it. The research is super clear, you guys. You tell yourself something over and over and over again, and you will believe it. And when you believe something, that's when you live it, right? So I always start, who do you want to be? Because you will you will live it. You'll start to believe it and you'll live it. Stop selling yourself short. And
how important is that expression of belief and confidence in someone as a leader of men?
To belief in yourself or confidence in the people?
Belief in right, there are two sides to that story. It was, yes, he was selling himself short, but it was also, you said, "No, you're not just you're my hero." Right. How important, I guess,
how does that change their mindset and affect their ability to then believe in themselves and then go perform it maybe even at a higher level after you instill that in them?
Yeah, I don't know. So the definition of leadership in the military manuals, hang on, because I'm going to show you. I got one here somewhere. Here it is. This is the military manual on leadership. I want you guys to look at this thing. Look how thick it is. It's not thick at all. It's just like a little workbook. You know why? Because there's nothing new under the sun about how to effectively lead people. And the very first part of it defines leadership. So, because we all have to have a common language. So if we're going to talk about leadership, make sure everybody's on the same page. And they define it. And they say it's the art of providing purpose, direction, and the motivation required to accomplish the mission for the greater good of the organization. I have found that if your purpose is purposeful enough and you've given everybody a really solid why we're asking you to do difficult things together, if the purpose is good and you've given them the skill set, the direction, most people don't need the motivation because they believe in the purpose and they want to do a good job and they move forward. So I'm not always running around looking for ways to motivate. You can inspire people. That's a great, because you can motivate people negatively. You can make them do push-ups. You can be a dickhead leader, and you can motivate them by whipping at them. But I find that if you have a strong purpose and that you've given them that direction, like, hey, why are we doing this? And here's what we're going to accomplish together. They usually have their own self-motivation. But in moments like that, hey, you're my hero. What that did, I think, is it snaps him back out of self and back into the we. I'm part of something. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. How important is that language? Because I think we were talking about it earlier, was that you language, that self language, whereas being a leader is not about yourself at all. It's a fact, giving yourself to others. How important is the language you're providing to your men Like, I guess not how important is it, but how does it adjust their perspective on things?
Look, what you just asked is a super wise question. So, and I'm going to give it a good, thorough answer. All right. So, I'm going to answer how important is the language that you're using when you talk to these people, regardless of the situation. So and this is really good to know, this is a heads up for y'all that are moving into the professional world. Yeah. When I tell you I'm in a different type of organization every week, I'm in a different type of organization every week. Whether, like I told you, there was ExxonMobil, then another one was Blattner, and they do energy, wind, solar, and wind. And that was all on the energy side. And then the very next week, I'm with teachers. And then the next week after that, I'm with agriculture people who sell insecticide stuff. Like it doesn't matter who I'm with. I always ask them on these conference calls before I come in and do the speech, or before we come in and do the downrange workshop with them. I'm like, hey, what are your challenges? What are you guys up against? And I'm telling you, across the board, because I think there's very few people that get to be a part of as many different things as I see across America. It's always two things. One, how do I get people to take responsibility for their part in the greater good of the organization? And why do they retreat into themselves and they don't understand that if they don't show up, it directly affects the organization? How do I get people to do that? And then number two is communication across the board. And communication shows up in a few different ways. So you have what they'll call silo departments, right? So the deliverables aren't talking to stock, and stock aren't talking to the people who are going to actually ship the product out. And nobody's talking to the front person who's working in sales, because sales would tell you right away that the customer doesn't want it coming at them that way. And nobody's talking. Communication. So here, this is, I'm going to write this down for you. So in every leadership dynamic, there's three things in every leadership dynamic. Let's see if you guys can see this. You see that? Did you see my picture? Okay, here's the leader. There's the person doing the leading and the person doing the following. All right, does that work? So if I had a whiteboard, I'd do it for you.
Yeah.
And then
we see it.
Okay. And then what goes on between the two? It's the communication between them. It's always there. Always. And if you were to define the basics of our job, and you would say, well, why are special operations guys so good? It's because they're badass and they have all kinds of cool equipment, and they got nods that have things all over their heads. No, it's because we do the basics well all the time. The basics of our job were three. Threes work really well. The military breaks everything into threes almost always. Like you've heard. But the basics of our job was shoot, move, communicate. I'm an aviator. I instruct in a very complex aircraft, a difficult plane to learn. And the basics of aviation, any pilot will tell you, are aviate, navigate, communicate. 2-3 weeks ago, I was talking to Rutgers University for the football team. They were in spring training when I was talking to the team. Like, what would be the basics of your job? Well, it'd be block, move. They would like throw, pass, run. I'm like, okay, so let's just call that move. So block, move, and then what else? Communicate. Like, it's always. So when you ask me, how important is the language? No matter what the situation, it's critical. And the problem is, the last chance that you guys are going to get to learn any kind of communication skill is almost always when you're still in school. Because when you go out to the workforce, they're not spending time and money and resources to teach their people how to talk to each other effectively. And it's an ongoing skill set. Most people stop learning how to communicate when they leave school. Some never even learned at all. And you guys know, like that engineering class, there were some fun folks, so guys like you, where you can talk to, and there were some dudes that stared at the totally engineer type, like 4 pens in their pocket,
Right.
and they stare at their feet, and hey, how you doing? Like,
Yep.
they don't know how to communicate. And you cannot get the mission, in other words, you can't give people the purpose and the direction if you don't know how to communicate with clarity. Because here's what happens when your message isn't absolutely clear. People get confused. And what happens when people are confused? They either do nothing, confused people get stuck. That's exactly what happens. If you're in sales, confused buyers. If they're not really sure what you're actually offering, and you're telling them about 33 different products you got and all the different things that this company does, and they're confused. And so they get stuck, and so they don't buy. Confused teammates. They don't know to move forward. So they either revert to what they think they ought to do or what they think you thought you meant. But if you don't learn to communicate clearly, and so we have a whole class that we teach at the Downrange Leadership Development. It's all called, we have my people, my mission, myself, and we have my communication. And we teach you, here's some techniques, and here's some fundamental principles that you have to know how to do. You can try some different techniques, but these fundamentals have never changed. And if you don't learn to communicate with clarity, your message will never be received as you intended it. And I will give y'all, if you've been hanging in here for an hour and 4 minutes on this podcast, and you take one thing away from it, take this one. If you just do this, let's say you're a new engineering student and you've got, you're in charge, they put you in charge of going out and surveying a site. And you've got 6 guys, and you tell them, "Hey, I need you guys to go down there. We're going to survey this block, and we're going to make sure that the plans that we got are going to be able to fit in this site they gave us. All right, let's make that happen. Hey, wait, come here. Here, and just do this. This is a magic phrase, y'all. Tell me what I just said. That's called a brief back. It's a very simple thing. Tell me what I just said. You're not questioning that they weren't listening to you. You're not, hey, you tell me what I just said. Pay attention. That's not what you're saying at all. You're saying, so that I know I said it and it's correctly, tell me what I just said. And they'll say something like this. Yeah, you want us to go down and survey the building and make sure it fits. Okay, well, that's part of it. But okay, I missed something. I meant go down there, make sure you got all your safety gear too. And like, you'll be amazed when people come back with you when you say, tell me what I just said. That one little tool alone is going to save you all kinds of confusion and ensures that what you said was absolutely heard.
That's great.
Yep. Speaking of that feedback loop, so obviously, you moved from being an Army Ranger to, a singer-songwriter in Nashville. What was the difference like with that feedback loop? The Army's very direct, oftentimes brutal feedback loop, and you go to an artistic field where, my guess is the feedback can be quite subjective. How did you adjust to that different type of feedback loop?
It was quite subjective. That's a great word. You know what songwriting did for me? It made me a better team player. Because when I first went in there, I kind of Sergeant Thomas'd it. And the way that I kind of say that is like, someone would we'd be co-writing on a song, right? And you would get to the second verse and we're trying to figure out, no one raised their hand that day when I asked for volunteers. Get picked out. I don't know. That's not, I don't think that's, there's something better. What if it's this? And I'd give feedback, but what I've learned over this, the best songwriters, they just keep it moving. So in other words, that's good, or nah, and if you trust the person that you're working with, and there's some sort of that collateral that you've built with them, then you can say things a lot more bluntly. But if you're not, you learn to work together. So I became a better I became even a better co-writer as time went on in Nashville. And it was very valuable because I learned how to, okay, the end state here is to get a great song. It's not to get what I want. It's to get a great song. We're already two great writers. We're going to get a great song. And we have what we have. Let's just keep moving forward. And when I started realizing, oh, well, that's like the essence of troop leading procedures. It's to keep people from being stuck. Move forward. Go through, keep moving and get more information as you don't sit around and wait. And that's what I learned with Nashville was I had to throttle back a little bit because, people have feelings and it's like, and they don't get that I'm not trying to hurt their feelings. I'm just trying to get the job done. And they're so used to dancing around issues sometimes. And then what I found is if you learn to have that conversation more tactfully and you come in and then look, let's go back to our communication lesson right here. If I were going to teach you guys the art of communicating effectively, there would be the very first technique I would tell you. Well, actually, it's a fundamental. The first flaw of communication, the failure of communication, is the assumption that it happened. The first task that you need to do when you start becoming a better communicator is, number one, learn to listen. And I suck at it because I'm so used to being the guy who talks. And let me tell you what you got to do. Hey, there's a nail in your forehead. That's why you have but they just want to be heard. So hear me on this. If you go into a situation, let's say, and the reason there seems to be this disagreement and nobody's coming around to a solution, there's a real reason for that. It's because you have not both agreed on the end state. We haven't defined why we're here. So we have our own view. We have our own window we're looking at, and we have our own, this is how it's got to be done. And you're just not going to agree with them. But if we both agree that we're here for the better of the organization, we're here today, hey, I missed the deadline for cheerleading sign up. Well, sorry, sir, there's no exceptions. Your daughter just can't do this. Well, okay, wait, help me understand why there's no exceptions. Well, because we just can't just let everybody, it's not fair to, hold up. Can we agree on this? Why are we all here? Well, we're here for the children. Okay, let's start with that. So we're all here for the children. If we're all here for the children, then how are we going to explain to kids that an arbitrary deadline we set as adults? See, this is how you get into that conversation. But I'm telling you, if you just sit down and learn to listen and you go, all right, help me understand the why behind this. And then just shut up. And then when people start feeling heard, this is why the number one part of communication is just learn to listen. Because when people feel heard, they feel understood. And when they feel understood, then you've earned the right to voice what you have to say. But not until they feel understood. So you've got to be that person to want to hear what they have to say just as badly as you're dying to spit out the answer. Because some of us are very quick. We know the answer to the question before that person even came out of their mouth. Like I know a lot of guys like that. But we have learned to go, and songwriting taught me that. A lot of that is that patience to sit and let it kind of work out. But y'all, if you want to learn to get on the top of communication, do the first one, the brief back. Tell me what I just said so that it ensures what you said was put out the way you meant it. If you want to learn how to talk with people and make things happen together when you go into these new places as a stranger, this kid with a degree, and like, who does this kid think he is? Go in and just listen. hey, help me understand, why how you guys do it. Like, how's your SOP? Help me understand that. And then I always like to write it down because when people see you writing things down, they feel like you're actually really listening to them. So, but again, it comes down to people who feel heard, feel understood. And when people feel understood, then they're willing to trust you and then they're willing to listen to you. But until then, man, you're going to go in this endless loop of just talking and talking and talking because you guys nobody feels heard. And anyway, there you go. That's rule number 1 about communication.
Thank you. Yeah.
You hit us with an Army 3-part acronym there for building trust too. Because that was actually going to be my next question. I was like, what would be a 3-letter acronym for building trust? But it seems like you just did it, which is, making sure someone's heard, listening to them, and then, from there they start to build trust.
Here's my big lesson on trust. So team building, you're going to hear a lot about that. Team building is trust building. That's it. You're just building trust. And the quickest way to bring men and women together onto a team is to put them through shared hardship. And that's why I go into these organizations, I go, what are you guys doing for we do this team building thing. I go, what is it? Oh, yeah, we all go bowling and we have, no, that's called a social. That's fun. That's a good thing. And that will getting people talking and get them, it's like a mixer, but that's not team building. Team building is we grow through going through difficult times together. Tough, realistic training. And I want you to think of trust. So, when was Greg's class? Like back in March when I saw y'all? We were over there.
Yeah, I think it was earlier mid-March.
Yes. A guy came up to me and goes, so do you have any advice? I'm going to be taking this job out in the field. I think he was going into it was like a gas pipeline type organization. He was kind of worried about how he was going to handle all these senior dudes who had been there for a while. He's working in the oil and gas industry. And I told him, well, go in and find somebody who knows what they're doing. Ask them all kinds of questions, make them feel heard, make them feel understood. And then when you're tasked with making a decision, make a decision, but you don't have to come in and be in charge of them right away. You don't have to, because we've all seen that person too, who's so unsure that they take charge of things. And what I told him was, look, I want you, if you start listening to people and asking them questions, what you're doing is, and you just start taking care of them. Your job in the beginning is just to figure out, how do I help the team? The better I can serve the team, the more likely the mission gets success. And here's a big 3-1. Mission, my people, my mission, my people, myself. That we put those 2 things before ourselves. Doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves, but the better we are, the more we've developed, the harder we work on ourselves, the better we serve the team. The better the team is served, now you start winning missions. When your people start realizing that you're there to help them, they begin to trust you. Trust in the bank account. And at some point, you're going to have to go in there and withdraw. You're going to have to go, hey guys, I need you to trust me on this. And they're not going to do it if you haven't built it up, but they will if you have. And these communication exercises, or putting people through difficult tasks together with the tough, realistic training. Those are the quickest way to build trust, so that when you need people to step up and do the mission, the why, for the difficult task for the greater good of the organization, they're not going to do it for the team unless they trust you.
Right. Keni, you've got just so much wisdom that you've kind of bestowed on us today. And it's, you've had a long career in different areas, between songwriting, your time as a motivational speaker, your time as a ranger. How do you kind of keep all these, brilliant moments and lessons together? Do you write these down? And then is there some sort of hierarchy, in this situation, this understanding is what I'm going to kind of lean upon before I go to the next thing? Or do you ever have a situation where you've got so many life lessons that you're kind of competing with to kind of figure out which way you want to move forward with the situation?
So what I'm hearing you ask, just so I'm clear, you're asking me, you have so much going through your head and many things that you want to teach and pass on. How do I track all that? And how do I decide what rises to the top and what's worth talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like for us too, like at a stage in life that we're at, we're looking for so much perspective and so much wisdom. And we hear a lot of things, but it can be hard to kind of delineate what we actually need and want to apply. And I just kind of want to understand, like, when you've gone through your experiences, how have you figured out what's really important and what can actually help you, build your character and be a successful person as you become today?
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So how do I, well, let's go back to that. A couple things. Remember, leadership manual. It's only that thick. Most of the things in here are stories about people who set the example based on the character traits that they tell us we should be, do, and know. So there aren't a whole lot of principles that I need to feel like I've got to teach. Now, my head is always coming up with new stories, but the story that I'm known for, whether I like it or not, is the Blackhawk Down story. So how do I use that story to guide these principles and move it? And it's just what we did today. People will ask a question. If you tell a great story and then they're on it, and then you give them a quick little lesson, and that's setting the example for others to follow. And look at what David Floyd was able to do. David Floyd was not in charge of anybody, but he set the example for others and he saved a lot of guys. And then you go, oh, well, how do you do that with your other people? And that's how you pass these lessons on. So when people come to me and they say, Kenny, help me develop my speech, or what is it that I can teach? I'm not a coach like you are. And I'm like, yeah, you are. You just haven't figured out what you want to teach. And that, once you get your core message, y'all, stick with it. Stick with the core message. Now, how do I organize it? I'm quite frankly, for me, I'm not that good. I can't organize it all. And so what I'll do is right before, so it wasn't last night, it was the night before last. I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I was speaking to a group who was raising funds. It was the last fundraiser they had done over a course of 14 years to try and open up their new church. They were going to break ground. And it was the Orthodox Christian church. And the head, it was a killer title. He was the Metropolitan. And it was like this, he was the head, it'd be like the 4-star general, like the bishop of North America, shows up in Cheyenne, Wyoming to kind of bless the whole thing. And he's at this event and I'm going to speaking, and he comes in, they're like, it's so different than what you and I, like when we go to church, the way that we worship is so different. It was, but he was, man, the guy was great. He comes in, he's got his robes on, and they actually had like a cane thing. And I said, they go, Metropolitan, this is Keni Thomas, and then they called him Your Eminence. And they go, and it felt all very different, but that's why I go, hey, so I don't understand the rank structure, and I can see people scrambling when you walk into the room. So you're probably like a 4-star general. So explain it to me. And he starts laughing. He goes, okay, so the title is called the Metropolitan because they refer to him like you would call a general sir or general. They refer to him as the Eminence. And he goes, but you can call me Constantine, was his name. And so here I am. I got this guy who goes to Istanbul every month to meet with all the leaders of churches around the world. And I'm thinking, what am I going to say to this guy? And then I realized I'm not there to impress that guy. I'm there to talk to the people who are sitting in the audience. And before I walk on the stage, I always do this. I always go, all right, hey, dear Jesus, Holy Spirit, you guys put me here. If you need me to say something that's outside of normal, make sure I hear it loud and clear, and I will say it. And I've just learned, like every now and then something will come into my head, and I'm like, man, where'd that come from? Like, and I just start, so 2 nights ago, I'm telling the story, and I'm generally on autopilot. I can customize it for whoever's in the audience and whatever challenges they're going for, but I'm telling the story as the story chronologically as it rolls. And all of a sudden I hear this, Jesus was a squad leader. And I stopped. And it wasn't an awkward pause, but I just stopped and I went, yeah, he was. I said, it's funny. If you read the New Testament, it's very much like a leadership manual. It's based on, in the end, Jesus, because I explain to people that a squad size element is 10 to 12 men, but that we only had 5 in our squad. So I go, but Jesus was a squad leader. He had 12 guys. And what was his message? His message was pretty simple. It was, hey, I got to go. I can't be here, but you're in charge. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. What do we do? Oh, just do what I do. Set the example. Yeah, but how do we do that? Just take care of, remember he said, take care of my flock. Just take care of people. Take care of each other. That's it. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult. I have never said that in a speech, but it was brilliant. And that was the thing that the guy came up to me and talked to. He goes, Kenny, I've done thousands of sermons and I've never thought to say it that way. He goes, but I did have a gift for you. And he pulls out this painting, a small painting that he gave me. And it was Jesus with a lamb over his shoulders. And he goes, I wanted you to have this because no man gets left behind. That's kind of the message that I feel from the Blackhawk Down story. He goes, but I love that Jesus was a squad leader. And I was like, but there you go. I didn't have that in my notes. I trusted the voice on my left and my right because it's been there for me and I don't suck at it. And I'm confident in what I do. But so I wish I could tell you I had a brilliant way of keeping it all together. I write a ton every day. So you guys, this is my day is always divided into, I plan it out. So I have three parts of my day. I have creative, priority, and admin. Actually, it's backwards. So creative, priority, and admin, because we get y'all, and this is what's going to happen with you guys. You're going to get caught up. I call it getting caught up in the thick of thin things, because everything's going to be urgent. Everything's a fire you're going to have to put out. And what ends up happening is it sucks up the time of developing yourself. So that's why I call them priority things. The priorities were read something, and then I had a self-help video I wanted to watch of this marketing guy and so read that. And then the creative, whether you're writing something, editing something, drawing something, I have to be creative. And that's otherwise if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you ask me, how, that was a long answer, but if you ask me, how do I organize what I'm going to teach? I keep the message very simple. And I try and keep it in 3s, just like the military does, because we found that that's what the brain can wrap itself around. 3s.
That's great. Yep. That's perfect. That's a great answer.
Yeah. Are we? How are we doing on time, Kenny? Just out of curiosity for you. I know we're running.
Yeah, we should wrap it up. It's and I know it sounds
figured.
I just came home. It's and it's bedtime, so I gotta get them all.
Sure. Is there anything that you want to plug? Any missions that you're a part of? Your upcoming book? Yeah. We always leave time at the end for that.
I think 2 things. I want you guys. I'm gonna give you something, and I'll send this to you guys, and you put it up on the screen. And it's an app that we built that it takes that Army. It's straight out of this, y'all, and it's the characteristic traits of be, do, and know. And you can scroll through them all, and you can read them all, and you can decide for yourself. But the app's set up. I want you to pick 5 out of each category. Here's the 5 things I feel like a leader should be. And the first one should always be the example. And then here's the first thing a leader should do: set the example. And here's the first thing a leader should know: what's the standard so I can set the example? And then there's all these other traits. And then you go through this little app and you pick the ones out that you want. And then at the end, it kind of gives you this little, here's the type of leader that you are. But more importantly, what it's done now is it's giving you've dialed in the avatar of the leader that people want to follow. And that's the leader you're going to become. And that's always been my hope for everyone. Please just be the leader people want to follow, whatever your kingdom may be. Your coworkers, your family, kids, you're a little league coach. You got a new team you're in charge of on the work site. Just be the kind of leader others want to follow. And what this app's going to do is it's going to open out and you're going to go, okay. And now you can be intentional. It's not enough to say, man, what Keni said was pretty cool. I got some good things out of that. I really do. I'm going to start being better. I'm going to work on my character. Okay. Let's get detailed about that. How are you going to do that? Because you cannot hit a target that you don't put out. And you remember that movie, The Patriot, aim small, miss small? You aim center mass. So you better know exactly what you're aiming at or you will not hit it. That's the way the universe works. Again, you tell yourself over and over, this is the type of leader I want to be. And you've written it down. And lo and behold, you start becoming that person. But it starts with knowing who that is. And it's kind of a cool thing. I'll give you that. And
yes,
then
please.
The other one I would say, which is the good self-promotion one, is that when you get into your organizations, 3 or 4 years down the line, you're going to be in charge of some developmental training. I will tell you this, take care of your people so that they trust you and set them up for that success. Because remember, listen to me, everything's going to be a fire and everything's going to be urgent, but you got to make time to develop them as leaders. You have to take the person who was where you were and what you're going to be soon, and you got to give them the skill set to be better at it. And you teach them how to lead. Be a steward of your profession. And we'll be here. Like if you want help with that, call me in. Let me come in and tell the story. I will gain trust. And then I'll bring my team in. And you got Delta Force guys and Rangers, and we know exactly what needs to happen to turn your organization into a group of leadership-minded team building. Because we come in and we got workshops, we got full days, we got whatever, but we know how to do it. We've been doing it.
Heck yeah.
So that would be my
awesome.
That's the Downrange Leadership Academy. So you guys, when you get when you get out into the world and you start making decisions, call us. But for now,
we get downrange, we'll call downrange.
When you get downrange, man, y'all call me. But
all right.
Yep.
Sounds good. Keni, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. This was so valuable to us, and I'm sure the people that are going to be listening and watching. But yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Becomes a better place when someone stands and leads the way, steps forward when they'd rather say not me. The judge says you're